Ah!
One, two, three. One, two, three.
Hi, my name is Ron Hood, and welcome to Volume 13 of the Woodsmaster series, where we teach you to be the Woodsmaster. In this volume of the Woodsmaster, we're going to be on the ground in the desert. Now, I don't know why you'd ever be on the ground in the desert. It might be because you didn't get Volume 12 of the Woodsmaster series, where we taught you how to keep your car running even if you had a problem. But no matter the reason, if you ever find yourself stuck out in the desert, needing desert survival skills, this is where you're going to find them. And we've got a passel of them for you too. We've got skills related to finding water, saving water. We're going to be talking about all kinds of shelter stuff and a whole pile of other special little tricks. In addition to those tricks, we've got something else up our sleeve. You see, there's a lot of books out there that have been giving out bad information about things like the solar still and so forth. And I want to set some of that stuff straight. I want to make it right. I want you to understand how they really work and how well they really work and whether or not they're actually worth the effort. So we're going to get into that. And we're also going to take a few shots at some of the movies that you see from time to time where somebody does something that looks right but really isn't. And those things are sometimes the things that kill people in a desert environment. So let's get going. We got a lot of stuff to do. The desert it's a land of extremes. I've been out here when the air temperature was 115 degrees during the daytime and below 40 at night. And that's an extreme. It's a huge difference between the daytime and nighttime temperatures. And it's also an extreme for your body to accommodate. You see, at night you can die from hypothermia, which we talked about in Volume 2, and at the daytime you can die from hyperthermia, or exposure to heat. So you've got to have skills that deal with both cold and heat in order to survive, maybe not comfortably, but at least make it through a desert survival emergency. There are several different kinds of deserts in the United States. This one here is sometimes called a chaparral desert. And basically what we have here is vegetation that's characterized by juniper trees and so forth. We have a few grasses and mostly sagebrush. Large parts of California, Nevada, and Arizona are covered by what's called a high desert. And often in the high desert you'll find just sagebrush and Joshua trees like these here. Another type of desert is sometimes called the southwestern desert, and that's what we have here. You can see we have a lot of high cliffs with a little bit of vegetation on there. Here's a little something about travel in the desert. I know a lot of books talk about traveling at night, and I've even seen films that talk about traveling at night. Let's talk about that in this way. Way out there on the other side of this, about 2 miles away, is a little ranch house. It's only 2 miles as the crow flies. But you can see that the crow can kind of go at the same elevation. When you're walking, you got to walk up and down all these little valleys that you see between here and there. And that's a lot of up and down. If you were to actually measure the distance you'd be walking, you wouldn't be walking 2 miles. you'd be walking 8, maybe even 10 miles going up and down, not to count all those times when you're going up and down the wrong canyon. Now let's put this together at night. You say, I'm going to walk to that little farmhouse out there, and somehow you fix it in your mind and you start to walk. Well, as soon as you walk down into one of those canyons behind me, why, golly, you can't see that little farmhouse anymore. So you start up the nearest hill. You come up to the top and you say, oh, I'm a little bit off, I'll just aim over that way. So now instead of going just up and down, you're going kind of like a rattlesnake, back and forth as well. Something else, you can't see all the hazards in the dark. If it's really dark out, you're not going to be able to see where you are. You're not going to see all of those little cactus. You're not going to see those drops that you see behind me there. Heck, there might be something 200 feet deep out there somewhere, and you won't see it if it's at night. If you're walking at night, you want to make sure that you've got a good moon out there or some way to illuminate the place you're walking in. And my guess is the moon is the best way to do it. And you need something that's going to act as a beacon for you, something that somehow is going to attract you. But just walking at night isn't going to do anything but save water, and it might kill you. Now, when you think about this kind of hiking in the night, it starts to say to you, gee, you know, I guess maybe the best thing to do is not walk. Not walk in the daytime, not walk at night. Stay with that vehicle or stay with whatever it is that got you stranded there. Because at least with that, you've got the ways to signal, you've got something that's going to be obvious, and you'll be able to reserve whatever water you've got within your body or on your person, and maybe you could survive long enough for someone to find you. But you've got a better chance doing that than taking off across a desert like this. Let's see what that dirt measures. That says 153.3 right now. So you've decided that you absolutely, positively got to walk. When do you walk? Well, you walk early in the morning when the sun is first starting to come up and the sky gets a little bit light. You can see, you start walking. As soon as it starts to get warm, you stop. You lay down in the shade and you relax. As soon as the sun goes down and you're looking at those shadows, walk until it gets dark and stop again. If you've got a full moon, you can walk during that. Or if it's a cloudy day, you can walk on a cloudy day. But when it starts to get hot, you need to stop. In fact, whenever you're walking out there, you ought to stop for about 20 minutes every hour. If you stop that often, you'll be able to make sure that you keep your metabolism kind of slowed down. What you don't want to do is start to sweat. Now you get thirsty and you've got some water, drink it. Drink it whenever you feel like you want to drink water. But don't ration your water. Next thing, as you're walking along, you might find yourself breathing a little bit deep. If you do that, you're probably breathing through your mouth. You don't want to do that. You want to breathe through your nose. If you're breathing through your mouth, you're moving too fast, slow down, relax, start breathing through your nose, and you'll do a lot better. There's something else. You know, that ground temperature was 150 degrees or so when we measured it. And your poor feet are stuck inside these boxes here, and it's going to be a lot hotter than just 150 degrees in there. Remember, you've got the friction from walking, you've got the temperature of the soil, and all kinds of other things acting to heat up those feet inside those little boxes. So they're going to be pretty miserable pretty quickly, and if your feet are miserable, you're miserable too, and you're not going to want to be doing too much walking. So what do? Well, like I said, when it gets good and hot outside, or before it gets good and hot, because you know it's going to get hot, find yourself a shady spot and relax. And make sure you give your feet a chance to cool off, because that's the only way you've got of getting out once you start walking. One of the things you hear on radio stations and television stations all the time is, holy moly, it was 105 degrees in the shade today. Well, that's wonderful. How hot is it in the sun? I mean, that's where a lot of people spend their time, and particularly in a desert survival situation. You may be in the sun a lot, and how hot really is it? And how cool is the shade? Well, let's take a look at it. I want you to see the difference between direct sunlight temperatures and temperatures in the shade. In order to show you the temperatures, well, I've got a temperature sensor sitting right down here in the dirt, on top of the dirt, and right up here in the shade in this rock, I've got the head. And this head will tell you both the temperature at the sensor and the temperature in the shade. Let's take a look at them. The temperature in the shade is 105.3. Let's see what that dirt measures. That says 153.3 right now. So there's a pretty significant temperature difference between the shade and the ground. Now there's a difference in shades. Let's talk about that for just a minute. I've moved into the shade of this juniper tree here, and this is a special kind of shade. Now you already know that the shade in that rock over there was 105 odd degrees, and right in here it's 103.8, and that's quite a bit cooler. Well, why is it cooler in here? It's cooler for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that I am in the shade because of the tree, but I'm also getting what's called transpiration cooling. That means that this tree is kicking off a little bit of moisture, and as that moisture evaporates, it cools the atmosphere around it. So shade in vegetation tends to be cooler than shade in rock piles and things like that. So if you're looking for shade in the desert, try to find shade that's put up by something like a juniper tree or anything else, any kind of other vegetation, and you're going to feel a lot cooler. Another thing is this. When I'm in here, I do have air motion. There's some ventilation coming through here. And that ventilation helps my body to cool itself naturally, because every time I sweat, that moisture is going to want to evaporate, and when it evaporates, it cools me off. This is a good kind of shade to be searching for when you're in a hot environment. Shade. Now come on in and join me, and let's talk about another kind of shade. Even though the outside temperature is still right about 105 degrees, plenty toasty, this little shelter we put up has given us some nice shade. However, when I look at the thermometer, it reads over 106 degrees, in fact about 106.2 at this point, and still climbing. Why is that? Why is it that the shade over there underneath that tree was 103 and this is 106? Well, it's because of the quality of the shade. This here is giving a shade, yeah, you can see that with your eyes, but what you don't see with your eyes is what's called the re-radiated infrared. And that's actually heat. You see, when we're in here, the sunlight is hitting the top of this black tarp, it's being absorbed, and then it's being re-radiated back into the interior of this little shelter. Which means, yeah, it's cooler than 158, but it's still not full shade. It just seems like it. And that's one of the mistakes that people make when they make survival shelters with little tarps and pieces of plastic and so forth, is that the sun makes its way through that piece of plastic, through that tarp or whatever, to the interior, and it still cooks them. They're not as cool as they could get if they did something to stop the re-radiated infrared. Now let me show you a trick to help you out and to help to make this a little bit cooler in here. I said I was going to show you how to make that shelter better, and here it is, the space blanket. Now you can see this thing reflects an awful lot of light back, and that's exactly what we want. It's also kind of, well, not exactly impervious to infrared, but it sure reflects a lot of that heat back away from the shelter. So if we put this on here like so, actually if we were doing it properly, we'd actually erect the shelter using only this. But we'll go ahead and just put a little reflective layer on it and go back inside, wait a couple of minutes and see what the temperature turns into. Well, since I put that reflective layer on here and given it a few moments to equalize, it looks like it's dropped about 2 degrees inside of this little shelter. Now, we did that through a reflective layer that's up on top that helps to reflect that infrared radiation back into space. We can't cool the air, but what we can do is stop ourselves from sucking up the heat from the sun. So we've done that pretty effectively. Now you don't have to have just a reflective layer to do that. There's two ways to do it, two ways that work pretty well. One is, of course, the reflective layer, and anything shiny over your head is going to make it a little cooler. And another way is to have two layers. So you might have a black layer like I have with my poncho here, and then a few inches above that a second layer made with maybe another poncho or another tarp. What happens then is the infrared will radiate down through that first layer. It gets trapped in the second layer where it creates a convection current because it's warm in there. And then the airflow through that convection drags the hot air outside, leaving you with a much cooler interior. So a two-layer above head tarp or a reflective tarp above your head is a good way to get yourself out of the sun and protect yourself from the direct rays of the big killer in the sky. We already know that the temperature of the soil out here is over 140 degrees in the sunlight. There's another way you could protect yourself from those high temperatures, and that's to bury yourself. Seems kind of extreme, but let me show you what happens when we dig a little hole and put the sensor down into the earth. Okay, we got ourselves a little hole now. This hot soil keeps falling into it. I don't want that to mess up our reading, so I'm going to try to get it in there a ways down where the cooler soil is, and then try to collapse some of the cooler soil on top of it. Now, when you're doing this, you got a couple of things working on your behalf. One, of course, is that the actual temperature is cooler down in the earth like that, and the other one is there's a little bit of moisture in there, and that helps a little bit on that convective cooling. Now, do you actually have to bury yourself? It kind of depends on the situation. Let's say, for instance, that your car really is stuck and you can't get out, or your, I don't know, a meteorite went through your motor and knocked you out so you can't move anywhere, but you still got the vehicle. If you dig a hole under your car, big enough hole for you to lay in, and you've got that entire vehicle over you, you'll be laying in nice cool dirt, and you'll have all of that shade given to you by the vehicle above you, the protection that that vehicle offers. So that's going to be a good shelter, and it's going to be kind of nice. If you dig a hole, sometimes you could dig a trench and cover up with one of those space blankets, and that'll give you enough protection. But the earth is definitely cooler down around 6 inches or so. Now, this thing has been in there for a little while, and right now she's reading 108 degrees. The outside temperature is reading 111 degrees, which is wonderful. Seems to keep getting hotter. There's only one thing I hate more than desert survival, and that's winter survival, because it's always so uncomfortable. But at least I could take clothes off in desert survival. Oops! Big mistake. We're going to be talking about taking your clothes off to cool off here shortly. In the meantime, the temperature down in there has dropped down to 107.8, and it'll continue to go down. We'll just give it a few minutes to stabilize and see what the temperature is actually going to be a few inches down in the ground. Let's go ahead and take a look at our little experiment here. Now, we've got one sensor that's outside. Let's see what the air temperature is. This appears to be about 107 degrees outside. That's nice and toasty, but we've got a cloud overhead. Now we'll look inside, and it looks like it's about 99 degrees or so in the hole. 99 in the hole, 107 outside the hole. That means it's cooler. Actually, it's going to be a little bit less than body temperature down inside that hole, so that's enough to save your life. You want to cool the body down so you don't have to sweat too much, because when you sweat too much, you use up the water, and the water is life. And you've got to protect the water that's in your body. So this is one good way of keeping your body core temperature down. Once in a while, I'll be wandering around out in the desert, and somebody will take a look at my hat and say, "Don't you think that black hat is pretty hot?" And the answer is, no, I don't. And here's why. You see, it really doesn't make any difference what color the hat is, as long as it gives you good protection from that penetrating infrared radiation we were talking about. Now, you see a black hat like this, it might absorb a little bit more radiation on the surface, but it doesn't conduct it to the inside because it's felt. What does get conducted to the inside is going to meet up with the sweat from my brow. And when it meets that sweat, it's going to take it and heat that sweat up and cause that to evaporate. And when it evaporates, it cools me. You see, a warm hat actually ends up being a little bit cooler because it forces evaporation to take place inside the hat, and that cools your head. And if your head's cool, you stay away from heat stroke and heat exhaustion and so forth. Or at least it gives you a little bit more protection. What about dark-colored clothes when you're walking around in the desert? Is that a problem? No, it's not. The Bedouin tribesmen wear typically dark-colored clothes. In fact, just about anybody who's in the desert a lot wears loose, baggy, dark-colored clothing for the same reason. The dark color absorbs the solar radiation. As soon as it gets near the moisture, it evaporates it, and then when it evaporates it, it cools you. So it helps cooling when you've got dark-colored clothing or hats on. Light-colored stuff just radiates that away, and sometimes that heat just penetrates down inside and burns you right through the light-colored fabrics. So, whatever you're wearing is probably okay as long as you're wearing something. Now, once in a while, I'll be watching television. You know, that's where I get a lot of my knowledge. I'll be watching television, and I'll see some guy staggering through the desert. Oh, it's so hot, and he throws this down, and he throws that down. The next thing you know, he's taking off his clothes. Is that a good idea? Whoa, Nelly, no, it isn't. That's a bad idea. See, when you take your clothes off like that, it lets all that radiation through, and you remember, it was 150 degrees on the surface of the ground here. It'll be 150 degrees on the surface of your skin because you don't have any shade on your skin. For the first few moments when you take your clothes off, you'll say, wow, this is a lot cooler. And from that point forward, you're dying. All that happens is the instant you get any moisture on your skin, it evaporates off of your skin, and your body can't keep up with it, and before long, the heat starts to make its way down into your body core, your core temperature starts to rise, and you go into heat exhaustion and eventually heat stroke. So wear clothes. What kind? Loose-fitting, dark-colored clothes are great, but it's got to be loose-fitting. These things here are really comfy. They absorb the moisture, they radiate it back out there, they evaporate, and I'm always comfortable in a nice long-sleeve, loose shirt when I'm walking through the desert. Just for your information, we're here in the Moab Desert, and at this moment, which is a few minutes after 3, it's still getting warmer, although right now it's running about 114 degrees or so. And the relative humidity today at this moment is around 12%. So it's 114 degrees outside, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 12% humidity, and it's getting hotter. Just in case you folks are wondering why I'm sitting here at 114 degrees, it's real hard to motivate outside. So I thought maybe I'd talk to you for a couple of minutes in the shade. I don't want to be a casualty. And that's another thing, you know, you got to keep in mind in desert survival. Try to make intelligent choices. Now, about this stuff here, you've all seen this in Volume 2 and Volume 3 of the Woodsmaster series. It's just a space blanket. And these things, of course, fold way up when you buy them brand new. And once you open them up, you can't ever get them back into the bag they came in. And I guess that's the way it ought to be. But this is a cool thing to have with you in a lot of different ways when you're in a desert survival situation, or just out in the desert. Keep it in your back pocket because they're so easy to carry. Let me show you something just as a reminder. If you get one, they're pretty easy to cut. In fact, they're pretty easy to tear. There we go. Sometimes it's easier just to do it that way. And when you tear them, you can tear off a piece about like so. Now, why would a guy want to tear off a little tiny piece like that? Well, here's why. See, I've been wearing sunglasses all along. And you probably already know this, or maybe then again you don't. But if I take these off, it's awfully bright out there. And as soon as I take them off, my eyes do the best they can to adapt to all of that radiation. And you know what? After a short period of time, they're going to start burning out. They're going to get, well, it's the same thing as snow blindness. There's going to get little bubbles in there. And if you're walking on white sand, you could just forget about it. You'll go blind, and then you'll be stumbling around in corners and stepping in holes and God knows what else. But it's not going to be a pleasant thing. Of course, nothing about dying from the heat is pleasant. So what do you need? You need sunglasses. And here they are. I can see right through these things. And these give me great protection against the solar radiation. So if you happen to be out in a very, very bright environment, you just put this back on like so. Here, you can try it out. There you go. That's it. There. Can you see okay now? You can see that that's giving you a little bit of vision through there, just enough so you can motivate. But it'll protect your eyes. Now watch out, it's going to get bright. Woo! So that's how it works. This is a pair of emergency sunglasses. Now there's a lot of ways you can strap these babies to your head. Of course you can, if you have some tape, you could just duct tape them to your ears, you know, glomp like that. You can cut it longer and wrap them around your ears. One thing's for sure, the stuff's pretty hot. So you're going to feel like it's suffocating you. Which brings me to the next point. When you cover yourself with it, don't cover yourself this way, because you're going to cut off your air circulation and then you'll die of asphyxiation, which saves you dying from dehydration and the other stuff. But just the same, if you want to stay on the road, this is a really good way. It protects your eyes. In another circumstance you find in the desert, sometimes the wind blows really hard. And when it's blowing really hard, it's kicking sand up in the air, sand and dust. And you know what? Out of those circumstances, these things don't do very much good for you. Plain old sunglasses just let that sand around. But this stuff here, wrapped around your face, around your head, gives you good protection for your eyes, and you could even continue to move during a sandstorm if you felt like you needed to do something like that. There's something else. You remember that this stuff reflects the heat. If you don't have a hat, you can cut off a small piece and make a little hat. Not only does it protect you from solar radiation through to your skull, which is a good idea, particularly if you're missing a few hairs like I am, but it also protects you from space aliens who might be trying to read your thoughts. So it's good stuff. Keep one of these things in your survival kit at all times. Another way to protect your eyes is with vegetation, like pieces of wood, or in this case a piece of juniper bark. All you do is you wrap your eyes like so and pull it around behind your head like that and tie it off. And then just squeeze it together a little bit. The idea is that it lets a little bit less light through the holes here. Now these are slots, and so they let in quite a bit. But if I squeeze it even more, I can get it down to so it's just like little pinholes almost, and that gives me good protection. It feels kind of weird because it's rubbing against my eyelashes, but it does protect my eyes from Mr. Big in the Sky. But that's not all. There's another way. You ever play hide and seek when you were a kid and someone pulls a scarf over your face and says, "I'm going to go hide"? Well, you know, like I do, that you can see through them. I can't see where you're hiding. Well, looky here. I've got my built-in sunglasses. This is not only protecting my eyes now, it's also protecting my face a little bit from sun. You see, one of the problems we have out here is sun exposure that causes sunburns. Sunburns eventually bubble and pus comes out, and then before long you're miserable, even more miserable than you were before. But this here can help to protect you from all of that excess radiation and the bubbles and nasty stuff. So there's that little headband again, doing something for your eyes. There are other ways that you could protect your skin, though. Let me show you one more. I don't like it, but it works. Oh boy, look at that stuff. I don't want any of this to get away because this stuff is valuable. It's charcoal. And why is it valuable? Well, it's valuable because this stuff can protect your face and other exposed parts of your body from the solar radiation. You see, the dark color of charcoal actually works to absorb those frequencies of light that cause sunburn. So if I rub this stuff on my face in a good thick coating, it won't look good, but it'll help protect me when I'm trekking across the desert. Good. Got to get all the highlights here. Sometimes if you crush it a little bit, it smears better. Oh yeah. Ooh, got some in my eye. It'll just protect my eye. Of course, the idea isn't to put it in your eye. The idea is to put it around your eye. Oh, gross. If I ever walk out of here, somebody sees me, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get a ride if I'm hitchhiking. Oh, man. I'm a charcoal freak. I've been doing this since I was a kid. In fact, when I was really young, I'd like to eat tar. That's a confession. Whenever they'd go around and they'd start putting tar on the roof of a house, they did that when I was a kid. Why? I'd sneak over there and steal a big old chunk of that juicy hot tar, and I'd chew on it. I don't know if it had any effects on me, but I did eat it. Is that better? This is how you do it. This is how you protect your face from that sunlight. That, some sunglasses, or some aluminum foil, or pull down your bandana, or look through a piece of wood. But you got to protect the exposed parts of your body. Keep your shirt on, keep your clothes on, keep your hat on, and you're walking in your own mobile shade. One of the so-called skills that you see in a lot of the movies is where a fellow walks along and he sees a cactus and he hacks the thing open and reaches in and scoops out a whole bunch of water. Well, that's not really a good idea, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, cactus don't hold water in big old puddles like that. They hold it in kind of a pulpy center, a little bit like a watermelon, only not nearly as wet. Another reason that you wouldn't want to do that is some of the cactus are actually poisonous. Even things like the giant saguaro cactus have, psychoactive chemicals in them that could cause you to, you might get some hallucinations, I'll put it that way. They might not be terrible hallucinations, but they could be bad enough that would jeopardize your survival. Then, of course, there's the well-known peyote cactus, known as a Lophophora williamsi. That one there, if you take that, you're out, and you'll probably die while you're out. And then there's these. Now this is one of a type of water barrel cactus, and there's a lot of these out there. This isn't actually a water barrel cactus, and I want to warn you, ordinarily it's not a good idea to take these things and never do it for practice. But this particular section that we found this one on is due to be bulldozed for a road, so it's okay for me to take this one apart and show you how it works. Since I've established that this one's going to die anyway, I'm going to take my Furman blade here and I'm going to open it up and show you what's inside one of these cactuses. Now, these are pretty tough little things. The Indians used to open them up with just a sharp stick. But you can see when you get inside here, there's this white, get this out of the way, I don't want to touch that with my hands, this white stuff here. And you can see just on the blade that there's a little bit of moisture in it, but not a lot. Well, what if you wanted to get the moisture that was in it out of this? How would you do that? Well, the easiest way to do it, certainly the safest, because you don't want to grab this thing, is to cut out a section like you see here. You can see this isn't going to make much of a meal. And you can just go ahead and chew on it just like it is. This isn't sweet. In fact, it isn't even good. But that's one way to get it out. As soon as you bite into something like this, you're going to discover that, holy moly, this is filled with little fibers, and those little fibers are going to make me choke. So how do you make it really drinkable? Well, you need to get out your rag. You know how the do-rags are. You take your piece of cactus, you set it inside the rag, and you hold it about like this. Now you can use a sock if you're not particular, and then you just spin it, like so. And as you spin it, it starts to squeeze the water out. You can see the water coming out here. It's nice and juicy right in that area there. That's the stuff you're drinking. And that's all that you get out of one of these. Now you might get lucky and find one that puts out a lot more moisture than this little guy did here. But that's about it. So this is not a great source of water. What it is good for is something like a chewing gum. You could stick this in your mouth and chew it, and then you're done with it. This doesn't hold its flavor on the bedpost overnight. So I don't suggest that as a great way of getting water. When you're done taking material out of a water barrel cactus, or whatever kind of cactus you're taking the moisture out of, if you take that chance, well, it's a good idea to take the part you cut off and put it back on top, something like this. Now when you put it back on top, the plant has a chance of survival. It will actually heal itself, and that part that you cut out will become a woody core. But this plant now has a chance of actually growing back together again until the bulldozer comes through and turns it into mulch. But that's a good idea. Put that thing back together and hope for the best. Sometimes finding water isn't all that easy. Now, you can't always use vegetation indicators to help you find water. This water here is right out there on bare rock, and there's no place for vegetation to grow. So what we've got to find this is the reflection of the water on the rock. That's how we located this particular thing. Now this isn't a prolific producer of water. It's dripping, maybe 3 or 4 times every, about twice a second. But that's a lot faster than a transpiration still or a solar still or anything of the sort. This is a pretty good way of getting some water. Let me show you how to get water off a dripping source like this. The first thing I'm going to do is put a few rocks around here to act like a little bit of a barrier. We're not actually building a dam. We're just going to build a little retainer. Now as soon as that's built, you can see I put a lot of effort into it. What I'm going to do is get out something that everybody should have with them when they go into the desert, and that's plastic. So let me find my plastic. Right there somewhere. There we go. Now you can see I got a little bit of white plastic here. I don't need a lot of it. And all I'm really going to do here is make a container. So, now this is my waterproof barrier. And the rocks act to hold this thing in place so it won't slide down the hillside as it starts to fill up. But at this rate, it's going to fill pretty quickly, and I'm going to have some water. Now let's talk about water for just a minute. I can tell you a lot of things about water, and probably already have, but the thing about this kind of water is this. Most of the water that you collect off of live sources of this type are likely to be polluted with something. In other words, this water's been dripping across and down a rock for some distance, and God knows what might have happened on that rock over the last whoever knows how long. What animals might have drunk out of it, what animals might have peed in it, and so forth. So this water really does have a lot of contamination in it. There might even be mineral contamination. There could be alkalis, salts, just about anything in this water. So should I drink it? Well, that's a tough question. In circumstances where you can actually purify the water, like boil it and so forth, you could kill the organics. Not a big deal. And in this kind of ground here, it's probably not likely that we're going to have anything really poisonous in it, other than possibly organics. So if I can boil the water, I'm in good shape. Or if I could filter the water, I'm in good shape. Or if I could poison the water with iodine, I'm in good shape. So yeah, I can go ahead and drink this water. But what if I didn't have those capabilities? What if I couldn't boil it, or kill it, or filter it? Then I'm in a situation, because if I drink the water and I want that water desperately, it could cause me illness, and that includes diarrhea and vomiting. And those are the 2 fastest ways for you to lose water from your body. So drinking a quart of this water could force me to lose a gallon of my own water. That's a tough choice to have to make. So if you have a way of purifying the water, this is cool. Here's another place where those movies mislead you. You ever seen a movie where a guy's crawling across the ground, across the desert, and comes upon a spring and there's all kinds of water in there? He throws his face in there and gulps like crazy. Oh man, think what he's drinking. That could kill you. Now, after using your imagination about what could be in this water, let me tell you something. It's still a find, and it's a find for this reason. There's other uses for the water than just drinking. Let me show you. Oh, yeah. This is cool. And that's the idea. Right now I'm laying in moisture, and my clothes are getting wet, a little bit wet, and that means that when I stand up and I start to move again, my wet clothing is going to help to cool me. Only this time the moisture that's cooling me didn't come from my own body. It came from the external environment. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to reserve the moisture that's in my body and take advantage of what I find free in nature. And I'll tell you, this is way cool. Back in Volume 2, when we talked about shelter, I told you about the 5 heat loss mechanisms: conduction, convection, radiation, respiration, and perspiration. And at that time we were talking about cold weather, and I explained to you that there was a way that you could turn those around to bring heat into your body. Well, the fact is that when you're in a desert environment, those 5 mechanisms still work to heat you up. In other words, you know, a little while ago we sat down on the ground, and when we were sitting on the ground I measured the air temperature and I measured the ground temperature, and the ground temperature is about 150 degrees. That's pretty toasty. So if I throw my fanny down onto the ground or onto a rock that's been in the sun, I'm gaining heat through that rock or through that sand. And what that tells me is I don't want to gain heat that way. What I want to do is I want to put something between me and the hot ground. A good idea is if you can find a log or something that lays out there that keeps you 6, 8, 10, 12 inches above the ground, you'll be a lot cooler. You won't be picking up heat from conduction. There's conduction, convection. What is convection? Remember, that's the motion of air past your body, often called wind. Now, if you've got a 115-degree wind going by, it's not going to help you a lot unless your body is pretty well hydrated. You see, if you're walking around and you're dehydrated, you're not going to be sweating very much. And that means that this hot air isn't going to be doing anything to cool you. Now, if you're sweating or your body is wet, it doesn't make too much difference about that air. You are going to cool off because the evaporation will cool you. So dehydration starts to fall into this thing when you're walking around in hot air. Hot blowing wind is going to have an effect on you. You will gain heat from it if you're not perspiring properly. And remember, if you're not wearing a shirt or something like that, you're going to be losing moisture before it has a chance to actually do anything to cool your body. So convection is a heat gain mechanism. Conduction, convection, radiation. Well, we already know about that. Out in the sun, it's 150 degrees. In the shade, it's 103 or 104 degrees. You want to get out of the sun because the sun is a heat gain mechanism. Conduction, convection, radiation, respiration. Every time you breathe in hot air, well, if you're properly hydrated, you breathe out cooler air. You see, your body's only at 98.6 degrees, but with an air temperature of 110 or maybe 115 degrees, you're breathing in very, very hot air. And once again, if you're properly hydrated, your lungs are going to work to help cool you off. In fact, that's how dogs cool themselves off. They don't sweat. All they do is they pant, and when they pant, they're bringing hot air in, and the respiration that's inside, the moisture loss that's in their lungs is what cools their bodies off, and that's what's happening for you as long as you have moisture in your system. Conduction, convection, radiation, respiration, perspiration. Back to the water in your body. You've got to have moisture in your body. If you don't perspire, if you're not sweating, you're not cooling, and then all these other things fall into place and you gain heat faster than your body can throw it off because it doesn't have a mechanism for throwing it off. You've lost the ability to respire away hot air. You've lost your ability to sweat away. You've lost your ability to take advantage of convection, and you heat up and die. And that's not good. As a final word, when we talked about shelter, I said, here are your heat loss mechanisms. Pay attention to these and you have a good chance of surviving in cold weather. In the desert, you have the same 5 mechanisms, and if you pay attention to those 5 mechanisms, you have a good chance of surviving the environment. Well, we've had this thing dripping now for about 5 minutes, and there it is there. Looks like we've got about a half a cup of water in 5 minutes. That's pretty good, actually. If we left this thing here for quite a while, let's say overnight we just made a camp up here, why, we'd have plenty of water to keep ourselves moving. But take a look at that stuff. That's got kind of a nasty, well, you've probably seen that someplace else before. I'm not sure that I want to drink it exactly as it is, but if I had a little bit of iodine or some, oh golly, chlorine or something like that to it, it would be fine for drinking. Now there's another use for this stuff. Remember back in that volume 2, I mentioned that we lose the majority of our heat through our head and neck, and that you've got to cover your head and neck to keep heat loss to a minimum when you're in cold environments. Well, guess what? It's a great place to lose heat in the desert. Now the hat helps to protect you from the direct radiation, but if you wet your hat and keep your head wet, why, I'll be able to cool my body off by cooling off my head. In fact, one of the ways of treating things like heat sickness, heat exposure, and so forth is by cooling the head and neck. And that's what I'm going to do here. This is sort of a preventative maintenance kind of thing. I'm going to make a nice wet do-rag. And after that's nice and moist, I'm going to take a little bit of the extra here and just put that in my hair. Oh, God, that's cool. Oh, now I feel really good. It's like taking a bath. It's refreshing. Oh, yeah, it's sloppy. God knows what I just put in my hair. But I'm not drinking it. And there it is, a wet do-rag. And you know what? I'm going to put this thing on like so that the wet portion is down my spine. And I've got a wet portion on my forehead, the back of my head, and now I'm going to be really cool. This is nice. I like it a lot. Simple trick, good thing to use dirty water for. Like just about everything in the desert, there's a warning about immersing your body in the water you find. Now, this water here was pretty safe. See, I didn't see anything funky looking hanging from it. Well, there might have been stuff in the water, but there wasn't any white crusty stuff around the edge of where the water was running. And that means that there isn't a lot of alkali or salt in it. Now, some places in the desert, you're going to find water coming down and there's going to be a lot of alkali, which is kind of a white crusty stuff, or salt. And both of those things are bad. If you were to take that water, it would feel good. You put it on your head and it seems to cool you off. But the salt and the alkali both burn your skin, or both do damage to it. And alkali in particular, there's places where the alkali in the water is so strong that it'll actually blister your skin. So you've got to be very careful. If you see water, you want to dip something in it to cool yourself off, be sure to look around the area and make sure you don't see a lot of crystals growing there. And that'll keep your skin pretty much on your face. Here's a little Woodsmaster tip for you. Now you saw that when I wanted to get the water out of the bottom of the bag, I just cut a little hole in it so I could drain the water out. And I did that for a reason. If I tried to pour the water out, I'd probably lose control of the bag and lose a bunch of water. This way I could control right where it went. But it also made a hole in the bag. That's where my finger is here. Does that mean the bag's useless? Of course not. It means it's time to make a knot. So, I just put a little knot in there about where that hole is. And the bag's as good as new, ready to use again. Well, you can see that the water stopped dripping here. Why did it stop dripping? Well, it stopped raining up on the mountains above us. So we don't have any more water coming down through these valleys and dripping into here. And we were lucky we got here just in time to collect that water. Does that mean that we don't have any more water available? Well, not really, because this water is going someplace. So let's see where we might be able to find more of this water farther on down the course. Well now, here's where some of that water went. Come on down and take a look at it. Whenever a rainstorm comes through and water runs for a little while, it tends to make little pools like that one down there. Now that water is probably no cleaner than the stuff we were taking right off the rock, but at least there's more water there. I could wet my clothes, and if I'm purifying the water, that's a good source because there's quite a bit of water right there. A lot of times you're going to find little hollows like this with water in them. This particular one here probably has a gallon or maybe even more right there. So we've got a real good source of water. But still, this water continues to run on down the canyon. That means it's going someplace else. And let's see what we find down there. What attracted us to this point was that shiny spot up there on the rock. We saw that and we said there must be water. Well, we went up there and we found some dripping water. Then we followed it down a little ways and we found a small pool of water. So the water's getting better. But then it went into this canyon. And right here at my feet I have mud. Now I don't know if there's any water underneath that mud because I haven't done anything to it. But in a lot of cases, when you find moist soil like this, if you dig into the moist soil on the bends of these little canyons and so forth, sometimes you'll find water down underneath that sand a little ways. It might be just a couple of inches, it might be a foot or so, but at least it's moist, and it's enough to wet your body, to moisten claws and so forth. And another thing, it might be a good place to put something like a solar still, because it is very, very moist in there, and you will get some moisture out of the ground. But let's see what we've got down in there. I'll dig a little hole. All I've really got here is some wet dirt. So this isn't going to be a source of water for us. We could put a still up, but that's a lot of work, and I don't want to dig anymore because I can see that it's nothing more than just moist soil, which if it was really, really hot, I could lay in and cool off. But now I think we need to continue our search for more water. These little holes here are caused by something that are called tiger ants. There's probably other names for them as well. But down in the bottom of each of these is a little critter that hides out in the bottom of the sand, and it just waits for an ant to come along. And when an ant comes along, why, he gets into this steep stuff and he starts to fall. And when he falls, down in here, there's a little tiny critter, and he'll grab him. Ah! This kind of cave here is an exception to the rock shelter rule I mentioned earlier. Earlier when I was talking, I mentioned to you that a lot of times the shade that's cast by a rock is going to be pretty hot because that rock is hot and because it's re-radiating that heat right out there into the so-called shade that you're trying to shelter in. These things, on the other hand, are very cool. This particular one is running kind of east-west, and so what we've got here is an area that's going to be in the shade all day long. Back in here, it runs 85 degrees. Right out there, it's running 105 degrees. So there's a big temperature difference just by moving a little ways into here, and if I go a little farther in there, it might even be cooler yet. Now obviously it gives me good protection from the sun and from the heat. It's going to so forth give me a chance to rest up, let my hydration levels increase because we found water in the location. But one of the problems with this is if someone's looking for you, they're never going to find you. You're hiding out in a rock cave. So if you do ever shelter in something like this and you are hoping for rescue, what you need to do is start some fires outside. So you've got either a bright fire at night or a smoky fire during the daytime, and that will attract attention. And in that way, there's a chance that somebody will find you despite the fact that you're sheltering in a cave. This looks like a pretty good canyon now. We found water in several places. Let's see if we can find a little bit more water farther on down. So I'm going to leave the shelter of this beautiful cave and do a little bit more walking. Well, we followed the stream all the way down here and we found some more of those little water holes. So it looks like we're finding quite a bit of water. Now it's nice to have this water here, but there's something special in the one that's just behind me here that I think you ought to see. That is a cow pie, and that is exactly the kind of reason we don't drink directly out of these. Look at this one here. That's a 9.5-inch blade. There's a lot of water in that baby. Well, we followed the canyon all the way down to this point, saw all those water indicators, little ponds and so forth, and look at here. Seems to be plenty of water. I guess that problem's all over with. Just about every survival book I pick up says something about the solar still. Now I got to tell you something. I taught at a university for about 20 years and I put several thousand, around 5,000 students through the program. And just about half of those people made solar stills. I probably made several hundred of them in my life. And through all of these solar stills, I seem to keep coming back with the same kind of results from them. Some books say these things will put out a pint to a quart of water every 24 hours. Well, I'm here to tell you that I never saw anything like that. We might get a couple of drips or drops in a can if it produces anything at all, but I've never seen anything close to something that would actually keep someone alive in a desert survival situation. Not only that, but when you build a solar still, you got to dig a hole. And when you dig a hole, you sweat. When you sweat, you lose water. When you lose water, you die. They don't make enough water to make it worthwhile digging the hole. Now that's my experience. There are other ways that you can use the sun to get moisture from your environment. I'm going to show you a couple of those. And I also want to show you how a solar still is put together just in case you want to test my results. So let's get to work. One of the solar collection techniques that I favor is called a transpiration bag. And what that involves is a plastic bag that goes over some kind of greenery like this tamarisk here. And as this plant starts to kick off moisture, the moisture condenses on the inside of the plastic sheet and eventually forms a little pocket of water that you can drain off into a container and drink. Now, this technique has been used and talked about in a lot of survival books. And I've got two different color bags here. One, of course, is black and the other one is clear. And I've heard people say that the black ones produce more water, or other people say that the white or clear ones produce more water. I think what we ought to do is do a little experiment. I'm going to put roughly the same amount of vegetation in a clear one as I will have in a black one. And let's give them about a half an hour and see what happens to these things. There we go. When you're making one of these, it's a good idea to try to get a pretty tight seal between the bush itself and your bag. What I generally do is tie a few little knots in the plastic here and there to kind of bring it in. And if you want to, if you've got fabric, you can shove some of that in there to help seal it off a little bit tighter. Now for this experiment, since I'm not relying on the water, I'm just going to give it a kind of a seal, tighten it up. There we go. About like so. And generally what happens is the water will tend to collect down here in this low spot. So that's just going to sit there in the sun, and we're going to go put one on another branch. In order to make sure it's good and airtight, and it needs to be airtight so you don't have a lot of circulation drawing that good moist air out, I try to tighten it down around the branches I'm trying to transpire from real tightly with a piece of cord like you have here. It's also, of course, a good idea not to have a lot of holes in the bag because that reduces the performance of the bag over time. Now there's something else I ought to point out while I'm doing this. This particular plant is safe. It's not going to hurt me any. But if I happen to see an oleander bush sticking up in my backyard and I wanted to test this and went ahead and put a transpiration bag over an oleander bush and then drank the water, it would probably kill me. You see, this could take toxins out of the plant. So the safest plants that you're going to be able to use this with would be the ones you'd find by streams like willow, aspen, anything like that. Most grasses are going to be just fine. This plant is okay. Most of them are going to be good. But don't take it into your backyard, grab an oleander bush and suck the juice out of it and hope that you're going to be okay, because I don't think you will be. Be careful. There we go. Now we've got two bags on and got the time. Now why am I putting a black bag on one and a clear one on the other? Let me explain that a little bit to you. Now it's been my experience that the black plastic certainly does get warmer inside. You're going to have higher temperatures in there. But the idea isn't to get it hotter inside, it's to get it hotter inside with a cool outside environment, meaning a clear plastic bag. That bag doesn't hold much heat, therefore it's cooler than the environment inside. Consequently, water condenses on the inside of the plastic and gives you the water that you're searching for. Black plastic, on the other hand, it gets it good and hot inside, but the black plastic is also very hot. Therefore, it's no cooler and the water doesn't condense on it. Let's see which way it really works. Now remember, there are people who sell books that tell you to use black plastic in solar stills. Well, looks like the clear one did pretty good. It put out a little bit of water here. It's not a lot, but it's only been going for about a half an hour. So let's see what we've got. I'll just go ahead and punch a hole in that. And I have to find a knife first. You know how hard it is for me to find a knife. Okay. This is not scientific here. It's like I got At least one. Two. Roughly 3 little handfuls of water off of this still in a half an hour. Whoop, more coming out there. So it didn't do too bad. That would help out. And if you put a bunch of these things up, it's going to give you water while you're relaxing. Let's go over to the black one and see what it does. We've got our black one here, and I can't actually feel any water in there. There certainly isn't a little pocket of it. Let me poke a hole in her. It's not even moist inside. This thing didn't even get wet. It feels like moist air inside, but none of it condensed on the inside of the plastic, and that's because the plastic is so darn warm. So there you have it. Clear plastic wins, and it also wins with solar stills.
Good. It actually is good.
Good.
Okay, let me just put this back so we can continue to collect.
How long has that been for? When you're looking for water sources in the desert, it's a good idea to look at the base of bluffs and mesas such as this one here. You can see there's a little bit of moisture down there wherever there's vegetation. But if you go to a canyon, looky there, there's a nice wet spot right in there. There's actually trees and some kind of vegetation growing there, and that's a good sign that there's water in the soil right there, and that's a good place to set up a solar still, transpiration still, or maybe even find open standing water. What other water indicators are there in the desert? Well, for one, there's the circular flight of small birds like quail and so forth. These birds like to stay near open standing water, so they'll fly down and they'll drink their water and then they'll fly in the general area. Another thing is bees and other insects. They like open water. Bees are always a good indicator because they're usually within a half a mile or so of open standing water. Another indicator is the wild animal. Wild animals like wild horses, burros and so forth, they'll go down to water and they'll drink twice a day, usually early in the morning and then again late at night. But when they drink, that's when they perform their mystic ablution, when they drop a load, or so to speak. So if you see a concentration of feces from things like burros and horses and so forth, it's probably near open standing water. Of course, it also means that that water might be a little bit nasty. Those are things that you need to look for. Now, another thing about those big animals, since they drink the water in the late afternoon and the early morning, they're going to have a trail system that tends to lead towards water, and it looks like a series of arrows coming in to make larger trails. So you'll see a lot of little trails coming in onto a larger trail, and that larger trail is the one that leads to the water. As you get near the water on that larger trail, you'll start to see the feces within probably a few hundred yards of wherever it is that they're getting their water. Sometimes they dig to get down to the water. But those are some of the basic indicators that you look for when you're walking around in the desert and you don't have other indicators to work with. Let's talk a little bit about chowing down in the desert. Now, you may or may not know this, but if you're eating carbohydrates, the process of digesting carbohydrates is kind of good for you in the desert. You see, carbohydrate digestion releases energy, and it also releases water and carbon dioxide. But if you eat just pure carbohydrates out in the desert, it's not going to take any moisture really from your body in order to do it. Now, if you eat a bunch of dry crackers, it's going to sure seem like it, but the fact remains that Carbohydrates are okay to eat when you're short on water, you're low on water. How about fats or proteins? Oops, I'm sorry. See, fats and proteins require water for digestion. So if you've got a big, fat, juicy steak and you pile into that thing, you're going to use up a lot of water just to get through the digestion process. So you need to stay away from fats and proteins and stick with carbohydrates if you're eating in a low water environment. Well, in addition to information about how to find water, we ought to take a look at why we need water. And to start that discussion, what I'd first like to do is to go back to Volume 4 on primitive navigation and travel and take a look at a discussion we had about dehydration.
That was a long, hot hike across the desert, but I knew this water was here. Just the same, dehydration is something that we need to talk about because it's a critical issue in wilderness travel. And the whole conversation, the whole discussion starts with this tin can right here. Well, the next subject is really important. It's dehydration. Now, we all know that we've got to drink a certain amount of water every day in order to remain hydrated. At least we think we know that. We also know that if you become dehydrated, you lose efficiency. And if you become dehydrated enough, you lose so much efficiency that you die. And that's really inefficient. At any rate, when we go up into the mountains, oftentimes we'll find people losing efficiency on the trail. And I'll ask them, have you been drinking water today? And they say, oh yeah, lots. Well, how much is that? Well, I don't know, they'll say. And then I ask them a really delicate question. And I know this, well, I'll just say it. I have to ask them, how much did you pee today? They look at me with a shock and they say, well, I don't know, I didn't check that. Well, let me tell you something. The best way to know if you're fully hydrated is to know how much you've urinated every day. You see, as human beings, we've got what we call an obligatory urinary output. In other words, we have to urinate approximately a quart per day. So if you knew that you had eliminated a quart, you know that you're fully hydrated. The problem's somewhere else. On the other hand, if you knew you'd only eliminated a little bit, well, you need to drink more water. This container holds approximately 1 quart of water. This is approximately what you need to eliminate on an average day. Now, how are you going to know that? Well, there's a little trick. Again, it's going to require kind of an experiment. When you feel the urge to surge, this is at home, of course, take some sort of a container with you, something like a measuring cup. And while you're performing your ablution, count 1001, 1002, 1003, and so forth. From that count and the amount that you're eliminating, you'll be able to calculate the number of counts you're going to need to perform each day in order to get rid of a quart of urine. And that's all you need. Now when you get to the wilderness and you feel the urge, start counting. 1001, 1002, 1003. It stops. Nowhere near enough. So you know you need to drink enough water to make sure that your count comes up to the amount that you need to eliminate on an average day. That's all there is to it. Kind of an experiment, kind of delicate, but just the same, it'll make the difference between life and death in some circumstances. Here's to water.
Well, now you've been reminded that the idea is to monitor your output, your water output, not your water intake. Whenever you're thirsty, drink. Now, in urban life, most of us drink enough water through our coffee and tea and just the odds and ends we get through the day, plus our food, to satisfy our water needs. There's no need to go out and make a special effort to drink 8 glasses of water per day. As long as you're monitoring the water that comes out, you're probably going to be okay. You'll be fully hydrated. Now, hydration is just part of the problem. There are basically 3 different problems we have when we start to dehydrate. One of those is heat cramps, one is heat exhaustion, and the third is heat stroke. Let's talk about those for a couple minutes. Heat cramps. Oh my God, talk about miserable. Your legs tighten up, your belly tightens up, you feel like somebody's cutting holes through your body. You just feel like heck. You feel sometimes dizzy, ill, and so on and so forth. Well, what's going on here? You're getting these cramps. You're not able to continue to walk. Well, what's happened here is something that's sometimes called hyponatremia, or salt loss. And it's pretty common among long-distance runners and hardcore bicyclists and so forth. They work very, very hard, and they drink and they drink and they drink, and pretty soon their belly feels like it's got a watermelon in it. Well, it does. It's full of water. And guess what? That water's not getting into their system, and so they're suffering from these heat cramps. Why isn't it getting in there? It's because the salt acts as a method for the body to transfer the fluids from where it goes in, which is your mouth and stomach, into the blood. The salt is kind of like the metabolic pathway that's used to get the water into the cells. If you lose salt, you lose the ability to transfer the water into your body, and you start to suffer heat cramps. Now, how much salt do you lose? Well, on average, you lose about, between 2 grams and about 4 grams per quart of water that you sweat. How much is a gram? That's about 1 gram of salt right there. Now, on an average day in the desert, how much water might you sweat out? Could be as much as 5 gallons. So you can see pretty quickly you're going to be running out of salt, and you're going to start to suffer those heat cramps. And they're pretty bad. They'll stop you from walking. Now, what about things like Gatorade and all that kind of stuff? Guess what? If you drink a whole quart of Gatorade, you get less than 1 gram of salt. It's nowhere near enough. So how do you fix it? Well, one of the traditional ways that people have used is to drink, believe it or not, chicken soup. Chicken soup has lots and lots of salt in it, and it's in a nice formula, so your body can utilize it properly. You can also take salt tablets. But you got to be careful. If you've got a problem with hypertension, high blood pressure, you don't want to be taking a lot of salt tablets. But if you start to feel those cramps in your muscles and it's hot out and you've been sweating, you might think about putting a little bit of salt in your diet. And you can start out with something simple like potato chips or whatever. The important thing to know is this. If you've got a belly that feels like a watermelon, that's full of water and it's not getting into your body, and you take just a little bit of salt, pretty quickly that watermelon is going to go away and you're going to feel better in a hurry. And that will be a demonstration of the power of hyponatremia. Heat exhaustion is the next one up the scale here after those miserable heat cramps. Now, heat exhaustion is very similar to the heat cramps. It's caused by a large loss of water and salt from the body, but you've also got headache, confusion, irritability, excessive sweating, you're weak, you're dizzy, you've got cramps, your body, your skin is pale and it's moist. Now, if somebody comes down with this kind of thing, the first thing you got to do is get them cool. Put them in the shade, get them above the ground so there's air circulation. Make sure the clothing is nice and loose. Sprinkle them with water, fan them, and then once they've recovered a little bit, give them some water about every 3 minutes. Don't just give them a quart of water and have them drink it, because if they do, the chances are they're just going to start to vomit and they'll lose all of the water that they put in plus a little bit more. So a small amount of water every 3 minutes, keep them cool, and make sure the back of the neck and the head is kept cool as well. Wet rags are a good way to do that. And of course, like I said, fan them, but keep them down and keep them relaxed, and make sure that they don't get up and do anything active for several hours after they suffer the symptoms, because it takes a while to recover from heat exhaustion. Now, if they go any farther into heat exhaustion, they go into the next stage, which is stroke, heat stroke. Oh, God. Let's talk about that. Heat stroke is the most severe heat injury, other than, of course, burning to death. But what it amounts to here is the body has lost its ability to cool itself. Now what we have is a body that is not sweating, the skin is hot, it's dry, the pulse is rapid, the person is dizzy, drops down into unconsciousness, eventually into a coma, and dies. Now, frequently, heat stroke is fatal. What do you do if you have somebody with you that has heat stroke? Well, of course, the first thing you do is you try to cool them off. Get them into a shady area, raise them up above the ground, make sure the air can circulate, sprinkle them with water, douse them with water if you can. Wet the back of their neck, wet their head. Do anything you can to cool that person down. That's what's essential, is get the cold into their body to reduce the body core temperature. Massage their limbs, get the blood flowing again so it gets the circulation out into the limbs and picks up that coolness that you've supplied via that water. If they regain consciousness, then what you want to do is give them a little bit of water, like I said before, every 3 minutes or so until they start to feel a little bit better. But whatever you do, if somebody suffers from heat stroke, it's a darn good idea to get them to a doctor after you've administered first aid. But you've got to take steps immediately if a person passes out in the sun. Let me show you a trick that my dad taught me many years ago, but I was reminded about by David Westcott at the Hoodlums annual get-together this year. Now, what it does is it makes a whistle, which is one of the important things in survival. You start out with an old can you find out there someplace. And one quick way to do this is just to kind of flatten it out like so. And then watch your fingers. Split the can, like so, and then make sure you got another flat piece right there. Kind of. Whoop! Where'd it go? There it is. There it is. Now, I've got a flat piece of aluminum here with a little hunky-doo on it. I'll just take off like so. What we're trying to do is get a constant size for the metal. Doesn't make much difference though. There we go. Chop off the ends like so. Now I got two pieces of metal. I take whoop, looks like this one's still got a little fern on it. Just try to trim that off. There we go. Now what I do is this. Take one piece of metal, and this one looks a little big for me. Chop it down. You'll see what I'm doing here in a minute. Whoop, a little more. That's good enough. Take one piece like so. You can see I got one crossed over the other. And I'll just fold it around like so. And then fold it around again. And then I take this little piece that was sticking through and fold it down like so. So when I turn it over, it's folded under. And now I've got this little flap here. Next step is to take the metal, the flap is on the bottom, and bend it where I have this other piece wrapped around, and wrap it around like so. I'll just use my finger here to kind of mold it. The idea is to make it so you've got a little gap like so. And then what you do is you squeezing it between your thumb and your forefinger like I have here. You're going to blow in here like this. Ain't much, but it works. And all it is an old tin can that I cut up a little bit into two pieces. You probably saw how quickly that went together. And if I spent a little bit more time on it, I could make a better whistle. If you make this little piece right in here longer, it gives you more of an echoing chamber. And then when you get that split right in there just right, it'll make a lot of noise. So, a cool wilderness skill that you use junk for. This one's been shot up pretty good, so I don't know if it's going to tear, but some people like to split them. I don't like to do that. If you just grab the neck or the muscle up here and grab the skin, and then just pull like so, it'd probably tear when we get to these shot holes here.
It's only one shot. That first all right. Jim, that first shot missed, right? That comes apart again.
Just above him.
We only got one.
Second shot took him out
See how those tears are the ones that are
From the stick.
coming apart.
No, that was a pissed off snake. He would have given us a full dose.
Yeah, he probably would have hurt you.
Did you hear what kind it is?
Probably ran.
Yeah.
But I think it is. Because the greens have all been really nice. When you get to the vent, it doesn't tear quite as easy. You just kind of give it a series of tugs, and a lot of times it'll just pull right loose at the vent. Like that.
So do you leave a chunk in the tail?
Yeah, I left a little piece in there. Then cleaning them after that, because it's, you didn't cut anything. You just go like this.
Easy.
There it is. It's nice and clean, ready to go.
Easier than doing a fish.
Oh yeah. This up here, I don't know. You can eat that if you want to, but it's pretty chewed up. You can cut off that little section right there. Yeah, just tear that off. Well, depends on how you want it to look when you eat it. If you want it to look like a snake, just cook it like a snake. But if you want to enjoy it, which is marginal anyway, slice it into little segments and cook it like a banana. Lay it on a frying pan or something hot. Yeah, exactly. And just cook it up like that. And they don't really have anything. I mean, I've never heard of any diseases that we catch out of them, so I wouldn't much worry about it. But that's all it is now. I don't know who wants this thing, but if you want to tan these hides, pretty easy. They the hides, just take this thing, leave it inside out, and just soak it in urine overnight, and that'll remove the good stuff, the fats from the hide. There's not a lot of it on there. You can see it's pretty clean. It's just some of the stuff. See the stuff that slips around there? That'll come off real easy after an overnight urine soak. Then after you get done with that, you can take the thing, turn it back inside right. The easiest way to do that is just with a stick or something. Just push that thing back in, and then soak it anywhere from 48 hours to 4.5 years in a 50-50 mix of alcohol, glycerin and alcohol, just isopropyl alcohol and glycerin. Just leave it in there. When you take it back out, just kind of dry it off, pat it off, and it'll be a real soft, durable hide. And it won't break down. But that's all it takes is glycerin and alcohol.
So does the color leach out of it when you have it alcohol?
Not at all.
No?
Yeah, they keep a really pretty color, and they're it's a good look. It'll be a good looking snake.
Well, we've been out here long enough. You're fine.
Any questions? I don't know who wants to hide, but do you want it, Ben?
Okay. I might take it.
There you go. Well, in the last video we had a lot of fun with some big blades on some elk bones. And a lot of folks wrote us and called us and told us they enjoyed that a lot. And they wanted to see some more of that kind of action. So, guess what? We're going to do it. We got a couple of new knives here we're going to demonstrate for you. And we're going to chop up some more frozen elk bones. This baby here is the one that started it all. It's called the Tops Steel Eagle 111. Now this is the kind of knife we took down to the Peruvian Amazon with us and put this thing to work. It has been all around the world. These knives have been all around the world, and they worked very, very hard in all kinds of different conditions. They are definitely one of the world's most proven blades. Now this blade here is about 11 inches long, from tip of its little tonto here all the way back to the edge of the cutting portion at the choil. It also sports a series of saw blades that go across the back here. That's what these notches are. This is probably the only effective saw I've ever seen on a big knife. Lots of other makers put these things on, but this is the only one that really works. And each of these blades is cut at a slightly different angle, so it really removes wood. But this is a well-balanced and extremely effective blade. I'm going to go ahead and give this a little warm-up on a piece of really hard hawthorn wood. You can see it doesn't have any trouble at all getting through. Whoop, there we go. An effective knife for wood. Now let's take a step farther and bring it up to the frozen elk leg bone. So there it is. Well, here you are. You asked for it. Slides right through. This thing is very, very hard. Remember, this is some of the densest bone on any animal out there. And in addition to that, it's frozen. Now what did it do to the blade? Well, actually it didn't do anything. There's no deformation. There's no change in the edge itself. In fact, it wasn't quite a shaving edge before, but it's still at about the same point. So the big old Tops 111 passes the test once again. This little baby here is made by a man named Furman of Furman Knives, and he's a newcomer to the knife-making scene. He's not exactly a newcomer to the steelworking scene, though. He's been doing that for about 50 years as a tool and die maker. But this is made out of a new steel called 3V, and it's extremely hard and extremely durable. And you've seen this blade working throughout this video. This is the one I use to dig holes, and I've done all kinds of stuff with it. It just doesn't seem to want to lose an edge, which is, of course, a good thing with a knife. This is a 9.5-inch blade here, and Mr. Furman has done a lot of design work on this, and it shows right here in this knife. Let's put this baby to work on the frozen elk bone and maybe a little piece of wood. Let me take a stab at this hard hawthorn wood here. Well, it doesn't seem to have any trouble going through hawthorn, so let's move on to the bone. That stuff's hard. Oh, man. Okay, what are you out here? Well, nothing. Amazing. Well, there's no deformation, no change in the blade, and I can't even detect any change in the edge here from what I had originally. So I'd say that the Furman blade passed the frozen elk bone test with flying colors. The final test I want to do today is on a knife made by a young man named Chris Bowles. Chris is new to the knife making scene, but his blades sure don't show. It looks like he's been making them for a long time. And this one here is what he calls his SK1. It's got an unusual handle design that gives you a lot of control. Your hand is not going to slide off of this blade. And it's got about, I think it's about a 9-inch blade here. There's a lot of weight towards the rear, so this tends to not make it as strong a chopper as others, but it gives you a lot more speed and control when you're doing other kinds of camp chores. So let's give this a shot on the frozen elk leg bone. Well, we destroyed the log. Let's see what we did to the knife here. Again, superior performance. The Bowles knife passed nicely. There's no change, deformation, or roll on the edge of the blade here, and it didn't have quite as much weight out here at the end of the blade, so it didn't have the power to pull on through the frozen bone. But as far as camp chores go, and on an all-around camp knife, this is one strong baby here. As an aside, when we put a knife in front of you and chop apart a bone, I want you to know that these knives have already been tested pretty thoroughly. So when you see these knives chopping through that bone, we know that it's going to go through the bone long before we ever put it in front of a camera. These knives have all passed our tests in a variety of different ways, including field testing by outfitters and guides and friends and students and all kinds of other people. So we know that when we recommend a blade, it's going to perform. Well, there you have it, Volume 13 of the Woodsmaster series. Desert survival. In this video you saw a lot of the neat tricks that'll keep you alive during an emergency in the desert. Remember, we're just after that first 24 to 48 hours of an emergency. After that, you're on your own. Now, if we wanted to turn this thing into an exhaustive study of desert survival, we probably would have to put out a 9-hour videotape. But you've seen a lot of the important skills. You've seen a lot of the little tricks that people don't know. And hopefully we've been able to educate you about some of the things that are incorrect in movies and in books. You've seen that stuff happen. You know what it is now. And if you go to the desert, you know a little bit about what to do. Well, I guess that's just about it. We're going to see you again in Volume 14 of the Woodsmaster series, and hopefully someday we'll see you on the trail.